Hello and welcome back to This Complex Life. Today we're diving into a question that many parents find themselves asking. Why doesn't my teen want to spend time with the family? If you've noticed your teen preferring the company of their friends over family dinners, camping trips, holidays, you're not alone. As they grow, they begin to prioritise their social life and explore their independence. It's a natural part of adolescence. It's not a rejection of family, but it can feel like that. It's a key part of emotional and social development. Today I'm going to go through why peer relationships take center stage during these years, how FOMO, fear of missing out, hopefully that's still a word that's used, I don't know, plays a role in their desires to be with friends, and what you can do to keep some meaningful family connection without stomping on their need for autonomy. It's about balance and supporting their growth and independence while finding ways to stay connected in positive and respectful ways is really, really important. This is part of a series I've been doing on teens. So if you haven't listened to any of the other episodes, it's not too late. They'll be there. They don't go in any particular order, so feel free to go through the catalogue and pick out the episodes that are useful to you. And if you have a question that you would like answered, send me an email. I would love to hear from you. I read all of the questions and I try to answer as many of them as I can. And if you want a more connected relationship with your teen, check out my Connected Teens course. It's available on demand and there'll be a link to that in the show notes and it's on my website as well. Okay, let's get into it. It is normal for teens to prioritize their social life. As they grow, as they develop, they're going to focus a little bit more on their peers. And sometimes this happens gradually at the end of primary school into early high school, and sometimes it can happen really suddenly. Everybody's a little bit different. But they're naturally driven to develop their own identity outside of the family. That can feel really wounding to parents. And I'm going to talk a little bit about parental rejection later in this episode. But part of the process is building connections with their friends and their peers, figuring out who they are, what they like, how they dress, the music they're into. All of that stuff is supposed to happen. And naturally, that's going to shift attention away from family towards their friends. When your friends start to become a big part of your world, then you might feel like you're going to miss out on something that they're doing that you can't do. So they have this pull, this desire to constantly be in touch with their friends, whether it's social events, staying connected through different apps and different tech and different ways they communicate. Spending time with family might seem like they're missing out on interactions with their peers. So then there's this tug of war between, maybe it's not the family thing that they're necessarily bothered about, but it's that might take them away from their friends. Now, I'm not saying you have to let them do this. I'm just providing a little bit of context so that you can understand this dilemma that they face and that there is a fear of missing out. And every event or sleepover or function or something that their friends go to that they don't, they can feel really left out, and that they're going to go to school the next day or that Monday morning and have missed out on something interesting or not been a part of that. And that can be really hard for them to understand about themselves and to deal with. So they might need a little bit of support to navigate that feeling of discomfort that comes with being left out. And that can be that FOMO, that fear of missing out. And that can happen in a number of ways, in someone else having a particular item of clothing that they want, or go on a particular holiday, or have a sleepover or a party or something like that. Not being included can be really hard for them and can be very anxiety provoking and rejecting for them as well. So as they develop in their own identity outside of the family, they're focusing more on building connections with friends. We get that. So the peer relationships do become central to their lives, and they often feel a stronger need and bigger desire to hang out with their friends and to be accepted, understood, and part of a social group. This shift away from the family is a normal part of growing up. So we need to remember that. How do we balance that with differentiation? So if you've listened to some of the other podcasts, I might have mentioned this word before, differentiation from family, but it's in the process of individuation where they're trying to separate themselves from their parents and their family identity. So spending time away from family helps them explore who they are outside of their family's influence. And they need space to do that. And this is quite an interesting one where I'll use an example of camping, because I like camping and we'll do that. Let's say you want to go camping with them and they're no. But their friend might ask them to do the exact same thing with them and their family. And they're like, sure, this would be great. I love it. And you're like, what the hell? What happened? I wanted to do this and you said no. So sometimes it's not about you or the activity. It's that there's a pull or a desire there to be with friends, or to see what someone else's version of normal is, or what they do, or to hang out with them. So that can be really hard, because if you're like, well, I've offered you to do that and you don't want to do it with me, and it can be a whole big thing. So sometimes they're trying to figure out who they are away from their family, and if those dynamics are different when you're with your family, you fall into different roles. There's often, expectations that people have. There might be some nagging and some, conflict that's long in the making. And sometimes they need a break from that too. They want to be around other people who don't have those same expectations or views on them. And this is a really interesting one. I ran an activity recently in one of my parenting groups where I got each parent to pick a strength that they recognized in their young person, in their child, and share an example of that strength. And it brought up some really beautiful discussion, because often parents don't share with their children what they like about them. And sometimes the very thing they like can be the thing that causes conflict. They might like that their child is strong-willed and has a good sense of social justice and stands up for what they believe in. And that same thing can almost can probably drive the parents crazy, because sometimes they're on the receiving end of that strong-willed nature, and that sense of injustice is when something's not fair for them around what age they think they should do things, or a sibling got to do it before them. So we've got to balance that out. Remember, then they need to figure this out, and they need to figure out who they are and how to express themselves without judgment or expectations. Another area that can be really tricky here is resisting conforming to family traditions. So as they start to develop their own identity, they might be resisting participating in particular family traditions or activities that no longer align with their developing views or interests. So that could be dinners, holidays, weekend activities, or it could be religious events, other significant milestones, or key parts for that family. And that's a really tricky thing to balance. And I think each one of those requires different types of conversations, because we want to allow them some opportunity to have differing beliefs or be exploring what they think is important to them without judgment and criticism, and maintain a strong sense of connection and have people show up for those important events and milestones in each other's lives. And that's a really tricky balance, and I think that requires a more delicate approach. And if that's something that's of interest to you, let me know. Write in, and I'll try and answer that in a more specific way on another episode. So let's try and keep that in mind, that balance to conform, to be there for family, to figure out who they are, can be really hard for teens. Now, where this can go wrong for parents, I've had an episode of this, and I'll pop a link to that in the show notes, all about rejection. But parents can often interpret their teens' reluctance to spend time with the family as rejection. And people respond to rejection in a number of ways. Some might not even know that they're feeling rejected. They might just get angry, they might get passive aggressive, or they might start making comments that actually push their teen further away. So let me give you an example here. So let's say you have rearranged your work hours so that you can leave work a little bit early so that you're able to pick your teen up from school. And they one day tell you, I don't need you to come pick me up. I'm going to get a lift home with, they name their friend. We're going to get ready there to go off to basketball training. And not only do you feel rejected, but you think, I have rearranged my schedule for this. How ungrateful. And if you come at the conversation with, you ungrateful so-and-so, don't you know how much I've done for you, or so-and-so's parents are better, and you start yelling and screaming, that's not going to bring you more connection. If you start saying, well, when you pick them up maybe afterwards, oh, so I'm only good when you need a lift, not going to bring you more connection. If you ignore them completely and you just start slamming doors, or give one-word answers, again, not going to bring you more connection. So if you want a relationship that's connected, you also have to sit with some of your feelings and manage them in a way that is more helpful, and role modeling the kind of behavior that you want to see in them. So if you're feeling rejected, that makes sense. You're allowed to feel rejected. Not all behavior is okay. So sit with that discomfort that you're feeling. Understand what that's like for you. Talk to a parent, a partner, your parents, a sister, brother, whoever you can talk to, And that feeling deserves to be voiced, but maybe not to your teen. You can say, I feel really rejected. All of a sudden they don't need me anymore. Or they used to like all of these things that we did together and now they don't. Notice that, talk about it, do what you need to do so that you can continue to have a good relationship with them. And keep in mind, they're not intentionally trying to reject you. They're trying to individuate. They're trying to seek independence. They're trying to establish a sense of self away from the family to allow them to develop their own identity and autonomy. So it's not about rejecting you, even though it can feel rejecting. Now, if you're handling that rejection in a way that's not super helpful, we might see an increase in conflict. And we might see things like them saying, you don't listen to me, or you're never on my side, or you don't understand. Those sorts of comments are probably telling you something about what they're feeling, or they might not want to talk to you at all. So you might see an increase in conflict there. And if you've got an increase in conflict, why on earth would you want to spend time with your family if you're always in conflict, if you feel you're getting told off, if you don't feel heard, if your parents are maybe passively aggressively displaying that they're feeling rejected? Like, you're a teen, you don't know that, you don't understand. So they might be inclined to withdraw a little more. So you're not going to get as much connection from them. They're not going to want to spend as much time with you if that's how they're feeling. Okay, so how do you do it differently? How do you balance the need for independence and family connection? It's really important to recognize and respect their need for independence. Rather than forcing family time, find ways to balance their social life with meaningful family connections. So you might offer flexibility. You might, be able to have some wiggle room on, instead of large family gatherings or really long dinners, maybe there's smaller events that don't feel like a chore, maybe short casual interactions that can feel less burdensome for teens who want to spend time with their friends. Maybe they can come later or leave early or bring a friend, or maybe they get to choose the activity. So starting to show that you care about what they are interested in and you take their ideas and thoughts and hopes into account. That's also role modeling to them some really good compromise skills and communication skills. So at this time of their life, when you've moved from manager to consultant, if you haven't heard of that, I'll pop a link to that in the show notes as well. You get to teach them through all of these interactions how to handle that in future. So if you're handling they've declined a family event and you're handling that by yelling at them or threatening them or trying to discipline them, you're teaching them those communication techniques. So you are in the spotlight here with what you role model is really important to them. So if you can teach them, I'm going to listen to you, I can validate your experience, I can understand where you're coming from, and how do we find a compromise here where it's win-win, not lose-lose. That's going to teach them some really valuable communication skills that they'll take with them into their lives, into their friends, with their teachers, with their partners. I mean, how awesome is that? So it's really important to maintain family connection, get creative about how to do that together, and how it might look as a teen is very different to how it might look as a child. The music they might listen to, you might not understand. So how can you find a shared playlist? Maybe you do an activity where there's not much talking, but you just know that they're available, you're available, and you're spending time together. And if they do want to talk, you've kind of got something there as a bit of a regular way of connecting. Some people like driving, some people like something like shooting hoops or playing ping pong where they might not have to talk, or having a hit of tennis. There can be a few different ways to kind of connect, but it might not be what you want. It might not be those deep and meaningful, they share everything with me kinds of moments, and that's okay. You're creating a regular way of connecting that'll be there when they need it. And my last tip is quality over quantity. So instead of trying to force long family dinners or constant togetherness or weekends away, they might not like that. Focus on making moments together more meaningful. A brief but positive conversation or a shared activity can help maintain connection without making them feel restricted or suffocated. So do that through, shared interests, or show an interest in things they are interested in. You might like to get them to pick an activity or bring a friend, like I mentioned earlier, and see if you can have short, frequent things like that. So when is it time to be concerned? If you see extreme withdrawal, so while it's normal for teens to want to spend time with their friends, extreme withdrawal from family and a complete lack of communication can be a red flag. If they're avoiding family entirely or they're super secretive, it might indicate a deeper issue like anxiety, depression, or peer problems. We want to be concerned about that. And we also want to be concerned about the other way. If they've completely withdrawn from friends and family is the only connection and they're not doing anything with anyone, that could be a concern as well. So let them know that you are there for them, that you care for them, even if they're pulling away or if they've withdrawn from family and friends or from peers. Either way, keep communication open without being overbearing, and seek some mental health support or support from a professional. I hope you found that helpful. Tune in for the next episode. And if you've got a question that you would like answered, feel free to get in touch. Thank you for listening. To keep the conversation going, head on over to Instagram or LinkedIn and follow me. If you'd like to keep updated with episodes and other interesting things happening in mental health, join my weekly This Complex Life newsletter, where I'll share tools, tips and insight. There's a link in the show notes. Got a question you want answered? Shoot me an email or a DM. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating and a review. It helps other people find the podcast.